Hey everyone, I'm Rob and welcome to the test drive. Today, I'm gonna show you exactly what it's like to drive the 2018 BMW X5 xDrive 40e. Now, the 40e is the plug-in hybrid version of the BMW X5, so it's going to be very interesting driving this today as compared to the 35i that I also recently drove on my channel. Under the hood of this 40e is a 2-liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine putting out 240 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque, as well as an electric motor putting out 111 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque. So what that gives you in total combination for this powertrain is 308 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque. So this is a little bit more powerful than the 35i that I drove. However, BMW has the 0 to 60 time on this at 6.5 seconds, which I'm going to say is probably because of the weight. I will put up the weight differences on the screen so you can see them. But that said, this is still a relatively quick SUV for the size. I mean, it really is. So again, I'm gonna take you guys for the ride here. I'm gonna put this camera on my head and we're gonna go for a drive. So we're gonna start with the key here, which I actually really like the design of. It is a very good looking key. Now, obviously this has the proximity key functionality, so you can lock it here, or I could lock it by tapping on this. Put my hand here, unlock it. Now, something that I really like about BMW is that if the car is locked, I can go to the rear door and do the same thing. I can also do the same thing, my watch came undone. I can also do the same thing with the trunk. So we're gonna get in here. Now, the first thing that's a little bit strange, but is obviously very common in any plug-in hybrid vehicle, or really a normal hybrid vehicle as well, is you put your foot on the brake, press the auto start stop button, and well, it doesn't make any sound. Obviously, because right now you're running fully on the battery. Now, when I picked this thing up, it was at 3% battery life, and when I got to my destination with it, originally when I got home with it, it went up to 6% just kind of from driving on the highway. Now, I charged it in my garage with the normal wall charger, and that got me up to around 35 or so percent, and then I had to drive it for like 40 minutes or so on the highway, and it actually went up into the 50s, and now it's here at 51%. So I wanted to do that because I wanted to be able to show you what this drives like purely electric as well. But anyways, and put this thing in reverse here. You have this nice big backup camera, of course, with the iDrive 6 system, which is a very nice system. Right now you see we're fully electric still because the engine is running at 0 RPMs. Obviously, it's completely off. Now, when you get in this, it automatically defaults to comfort mode as well as auto eDrive. Now the gasoline engine kicks on as soon as I got up over like maybe 20 miles per hour. But you do have several different driving modes. So obviously, like a normal gasoline powered BMW of this age, you have at least 3 driving modes. So you have Eco Pro, which is by far the most economical. The throttle response is significantly slower than normal. It really tries to keep you in a high gear at a low RPM. When you go into comfort, it'll downshift much more quickly, and it gives you just kind of a normal driving experience. Obviously, when you go into sport, it's significantly more aggressive. But that said, we're obviously slowing down here, and it's already defaulted back to the electric motor. Now, that said, if you switch this eDrive button here into Max eDrive, now it's going to drive all electric, which is kind of weird, I guess, combined with sport. Probably should be in comfort, but basically in Max eDrive, it's going to try and drive with the electric motor for as long as it possibly can. I mean, we're going 40 miles an hour here. Now there is a top speed though, so I'll put that on the screen. I think it's somewhere around 75 miles per hour, at which at that point it will actually go back to the gasoline motor, having that engaged, and having the dual powertrain to be able to support that speed. Now if you floor it here, it kicks you out of Max eDrive and it goes back to running on the gasoline engine as well. Now, the last electric driving mode is the save battery mode. So what this is going to do is it's basically not going to use the battery unless you are stopped or you're at a very low speed. Let's say you're backing into a parking spot. But like here, you know, I just took off from a stop and it automatically went back to the gasoline engine, and that is to save battery. Now, the other thing is when you drive this thing on the highway, it'll actually charge the battery. It also does that with the regenerative braking. Again, that's if you're driving just kind of at a more leisurely pace. If you're flooring it, obviously, it's going to still use some battery power to give you the maximum torque possible, which is only possible because of the electric motor. I mean, it's that 332 pound-feet of torque versus the 260 that the gasoline engine has on its own. And the only thing you're really missing from the 35i, I mean, these are quite comparable in price, is that 6-cylinder sound. Now, some people don't really care. They're not necessarily excited by the sound of a 6-cylinder, but the 6-cylinder 35i sounds really good. This thing still allows you to drive very spiritedly. I mean, it's a really nimble feeling vehicle. If you look at like my E70 X5, it feels very heavy. It just doesn't feel like it moves as nimbly as the latest generation X5s do, and obviously there's a lot of reasons for that, but you know, this latest generation of the X5 is just even better in terms of, you know, giving you great performance and the ability to have a lot of fun, as well as the practicality and size of an SUV. But again, this powertrain here is extremely quiet. So when I was in the 35i, if you floored it, now see, of course, New York's roads are so bad, but you didn't actually feel that too much. The 35i gave you that audible feedback. It didn't feel like it was muted in any way. And this really kind of feels like it is muted. Now, a 4-cylinder engine doesn't necessarily sound that great in most instances. There are 4-cylinders that do sound pretty good though. This probably isn't one of them, but at the same time, you do get some audible feedback. It's just not like what you get in the 35i. But despite that, it still performs really well. I mean, 308 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque is no joke, and that torque is available at such a low RPM. I'm gonna put this in manual here. The shifts aren't totally instant, but they're almost there. And these paddles do feel really nice, and it's a really satisfying actuation as well. You really feel like you want to click them as much as you can. Back into automatic here. So now we're going to put this into max e-drive. Now, BMW states that with a level 2 charger, this 40e will go from 0 to 100% charge in only 3 hours, which is really not bad. Now, I charged the 530e sedan with a standard wall outlet, and I did that in like probably 5 to 6 hours. I have an actual video of that where I talk about it and I actually drive it on electric only to see how far I can go. Now, this one was plugged in for probably an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it went from about 5% to about 35% in that time. So it's obviously going to charge significantly slower. But that said, it's pretty cool that you can go somewhat of a distance on electric only. I mean, right now we're driving electric only. This is making no sound. The battery is depleting pretty quickly. I mean, when I put it into max e-drive, we were around 45%, and it's already going down to 40, and it's probably going to up to 39%. Obviously, it's having a little bit of a challenge with this hill here, and it does show you the battery consumption level here. When you're charging this, when it's plugged into the wall, it tells you, it gives you a range of about 19 miles. Now, the 530e, when I did that, gave me a range of 15, and I was able to get about 20 miles out of it. So this giving you 19, I would imagine you can probably exceed that by a little bit, but not by much. So I put it back into save battery mode here, and then the gasoline engine has kicked on. But for short trips, let's say you're just going to the grocery store in your town or suburb, it's really nice because you can do that without using any fuel, and that is really cool. And for somebody that does a lot of short trips, I mean, you could really never have to use gas unless you're taking a long trip. So obviously it depends on your situation. If you're driving a lot on the highway, then you know, it might be a little bit different of a situation. It might not necessarily be worth getting the 40e, but you know, it's just at an interesting spot because it is priced almost identically to the 35i. I mean, the 35i that I tested recently was equipped about the same as this one was, and it was around $66,000, $66,500 maybe, and this one is just over 68. And then you do get a tax credit, at least in the US, for buying this vehicle, and then that actually, to my knowledge, would make it cheaper than the 35i. So it just kind of depends. Yeah, but yeah, you can drive this spiritedly. I mean, it pulls pretty hard, and again, I mean, you have 332 pound-feet of torque, so you can have a lot of fun with this. Just because it is a plug-in hybrid, it does not mean that it is boring at all, because it really isn't. The only thing that you miss out on compared to a 35i, for example, is the sound. But this still, it doesn't sound bad. It really doesn't. It's just quieter, and obviously it doesn't have the growl of a 6-cylinder. But if you're a sound junkie and you're looking at performance, you have the 50i, or obviously you do have the X5M, which is, again, totally different vehicle. You know, but you do have options that perform and give you, you know, that performance aspect that this one doesn't quite, even though this still allows you to have so much fun. Now, a quick overview of the technology here. You do have the 10.2-inch touchscreen with the iDrive 6 system. You obviously have the touch functionality where you can actually go through the menus by touching the screen, or you can do so with the touchpad scroll wheel down here. So I really like that. I'm kind of curious as to why this has the older style shift lever, whereas the 35i has a newer style lever. I mean, this is the same one that I have in my 2012 E70 X5. And this is just a really comfortable vehicle to drive or to be in. The seats, even the Black Dakota leather that's in here, is really soft. It's a very soft leather wrapped steering wheel. It feels great. And you feel like you have a lot of room in here. You really do. And then you also have the large panoramic moonroof, which helps open this up even more. Now, there's only one drivetrain option available for the 40e, at least in the US, and that is the xDrive all-wheel drive system. So there's no rear-wheel drive system, but the xDrive system does give you a lot of grip. It just makes the performance on this thing better. I'll show you how this thing corners here. Yeah, you get quite a bit of body roll. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it still goes through turns with pretty good amount of confidence. I mean, it's not bad. And it's so nimble. I mean, it really feels like a lightweight SUV when it's really not that lightweight at all. And I love that even in this, you do have the sport displays as well. So in conclusion, even though I'm probably not a plug-in hybrid buyer, I did really enjoy driving this BMW X5 xDrive 40e. I think it's a great SUV, and I think that for the right buyer, it is a very good option. The only caveat is that you cannot get the third row seating with this X5, whereas it is available in all of the other X5s. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this SUV and the video and what this X5 40e competes against. And thanks again for taking this test drive with me. I'll talk to you soon.